So, how do you actually build a product that wins in the world's fastest growing markets? I mean, it's a huge question, right? Trillions of dollars are on the line. And as we're about to see, even the biggest local companies, the ones who should know the market best, can get it spectacularly wrong. The stakes are just incredibly high. And honestly, the old ways of doing things, they just don't work anymore.
To see what I mean, let's start with a bit of a puzzle. Picture this, two different commercial trucks, both launched in India by two totally different Indian companies. Both were designed from the ground up for the local market. And you know what? Both of them failed. The big question is, why? And what's so fascinating here is that they failed for completely opposite reasons. First, you've got Truck A, the advanced model. It was engineered for speed and efficiency. But here's the thing. On India's often poor quality roads, you can't go that fast. So it was basically over-engineered, and that extra cost just wasn't worth it. Then you have Truck B, the super low-cost model. But it was so low cost that its engine couldn't handle what drivers actually do, which is overload their trucks. The engines kept failing, its reputation tanked, and sales just dried up. Two totally different strategies, but the exact same result: total failure.
And this really gets to the heart of the challenge, doesn't it? Customers in these markets are caught in this constant tug of war. They are, of course, incredibly sensitive to price, but at the very same time, they are extremely demanding when it comes to performance and how durable a product is. It's this razor's edge, this tightrope that companies have to walk.
So how in the world do you solve a puzzle like that? Well, it takes a whole new way of thinking, a fundamental shift in approach that's called design to value. Design to value is really all about one thing: challenging every single assumption you have. It's not about taking your fancy global product and just making a cheaper version of it. No, it's about getting an incredibly deep understanding of what your customers actually value, what they are truly willing to pay for, and then engineering a product that delivers exactly that and absolutely nothing more. Okay, so that sounds good in theory, but how do you actually put it into practice? Well, we've pulled together 3 key lessons from companies that are absolutely nailing this. Let's get into lesson 1. You have got to shake up your thinking internally. And here's a fantastic, surprisingly simple way to do it. It's with something called collision workshops. The idea is brilliant. You get a bunch of people in a room who almost never talk to each other. We're talking suppliers, marketers, product engineers, finance folks, and you just let them challenge each other's ideas. It's a cheap, fast, and unbelievably effective way to break those old ingrained habits and spark some genuinely new ideas.
Check out this perfect example from an auto parts company. During one of these workshops, a marketer just casually mentioned a piece of customer feedback. The wheels are heavy. Now, the engineers in the room, their ears perked up, and they came up with a totally counterintuitive idea. What if, they said, we used a more expensive, higher-grade steel? And get this, it worked. Because the steel was stronger, they needed less of it. The wheels got lighter, and the company's total costs actually went down, all from one little comment. Or how about this one, from a telecom company? In a workshop, they had this big aha moment. They realized their business customers in smaller cities probably didn't need the same 99.999% network uptime that clients in major hubs demand. So they tried something new, offer a nice price discount in exchange for a slightly lower uptime guarantee. You know what happened? It was a total game changer. They became super competitive in those new markets and managed to slash their cost to serve those customers by a factor of 4.
Now, this idea of shaking up your thinking, it leads right into our second lesson. And that is, sometimes it's not enough to just have new ideas. You have to be brave enough to start completely from scratch. This quote right here, it just says it all. The old corporate playbook of taking a product, stripping out a few features, slapping a lower price tag on it, that's a recipe for failure. Customers are smart. They know when they're getting a watered-down, second-rate product. And that's why, so often, you have to be willing to go back to the drawing board and redesign from the ground up. So how do you do that without it becoming a total mess? Well, the smartest companies follow a really disciplined 3-step process. First, they literally list every single feature on the product that they could possibly change. Second, they map all those features out by asking 3 questions. How important is this to the customer? How much does it cost us? And do our customers even understand what it does? Finally, and this is the crucial part, they do a forced ranking of the top features to find out what truly drives the decision to buy. For example, a company that makes farm equipment went through this whole process, and they discovered something incredibly important. For their customers, small-scale farmers, all the fancy gadgets and gizmos didn't matter one bit. The single most important feature, the thing they cared about most, was how durable the tires were.
because they were constantly driving on a mix of pavement and dirt fields. So by focusing all their energy on that one thing, they made a product that was way more appealing than anything else on the market.
And the results when you really commit to starting from scratch, they can be absolutely staggering. A huge global consumer products company was getting hammered by a local competitor on price. But instead of just cutting their own price, they went back to the drawing board. They redesigned their personal care product from the ground up. We're talking the formula, the packaging, even the pump on the bottle. And the result? A 40% improvement in their profit margin. Just wow. All right, this brings us to our third and final lesson, which is all about connecting the design process directly to the factory floor. It's called Design for Manufacturing.
Now, this idea goes a little deeper than just what the customer sees. The really clever companies are always looking for small tweaks they can make to the product's design that will let them use cheaper machines or use local suppliers instead of importing parts. This can be a massive, massive advantage when you're in a super competitive market.
Let's go back to that farm equipment company. They realized that in a few places, they could replace some expensive fasteners with simple, cheap welds during assembly. Now, this one tiny change did two amazing things. One, it lowered their own manufacturing costs. And two, it actually lowered the farmer's maintenance costs because now there are no fasteners to fall off and get lost in the field. It was a total win-win.
And here's another brilliant example of this in action. An engine manufacturer figured out that if they just designed a drive shaft with slightly more generous curves, they didn't need these super expensive high-speed forging machines to make it. Instead, they could use much cheaper, locally made, hot forging hammers. That one little design tweak, it reduced their materials cost by 10%.
So let's pull all of this together. What does this all add up to? Let's distill these 3 lessons into a clear, actionable playbook that you can use.
It really comes down to these 3 keys to success. Number 1, shake up your thinking. Get those different teams in a room and force those conversations. Number 2, be willing to start from scratch. Stop just stripping down old products and instead build new ones around the handful of features customers actually care about. And number 3, design for the factory. Always be thinking about how little design changes can create huge savings in how a product is made.
In the end, it all comes down to this. The companies that are going to win are the ones that learn how to relentlessly challenge their own assumptions at every single stage of the game, from the first idea to the final product. That is really the only way to master the extremes of this new competitive world.
And that really leaves us with one final thought to take away from all this. It doesn't matter if you're designing trucks or you're creating software, it's always worth asking yourself, what are the deeply held assumptions that we have about our customers, about our designs, about our processes that just might be holding us back from our next huge success?